They stop mentioning you. They talk about their life as if you were never part of it. And suddenly you find yourself wondering something that feels almost impossible to process. How can someone who once said they loved me act like I never mattered at all? But here's the part most people don't understand. This behavior isn't random. And once you understand the psychology behind it, something incredibly important begins to make sense. If you've lived through this, you know how deeply it can hurt. Because you remember the moments that felt real, the conversations late at night, the laughter, the promises, the plans for the future. At one point, you probably believed the connection meant something to both of you, but after the relationship ended, something changed. It wasn't just distance, it felt like erasure. They stopped acknowledging the relationship, stopped talking about what you shared. Sometimes they even behaved as if the relationship never existed at all, and that emotional whiplash can be devastating. Because your mind tries to make sense of something that feels completely illogical. You might ask yourself, did I imagine everything? Did the relationship mean nothing to them? Was I the only one who believed it was real? And the truth is, many survivors of narcissistic relationships ask these exact same questions. To understand this behavior, we need to understand something important about narcissistic psychology. For many narcissistic personalities, relationships are not experienced the same way they are for emotionally healthy people. Most people build relationships through empathy, through shared emotional investment, through mutual care. But narcissists often experience relationships more through the lens of utility. What the relationship provides: attention, admiration, validation, emotional reactions. This is often referred to as narcissistic supply. And when a relationship stops providing that supply, something changes. The emotional attachment that once appeared intense can suddenly disappear. Not because the relationship never existed, but because the purpose it served has changed. Here's the part most people don't understand. When a narcissist mentally closes a chapter of their life, they often detach from it completely, almost as if they are editing their own story. If a relationship no longer supports the image they want to maintain, it may simply be removed from the narrative. This isn't how most people process relationships. Most people carry memories, lessons, emotions. But narcissists are often focused on something different. Control of the narrative, control of perception. And sometimes the easiest way to maintain that control is to behave as if the past never happened. But there's another layer to this behavior that many survivors only begin to understand much later. Because when a narcissist acts as if you never existed, it can feel like your entire experience has been erased. The memories, the connection, the time you invested, the emotional energy you poured into the relationship. And that erasure can feel deeply destabilizing. Because human beings naturally seek meaning in their relationships. We want to believe that the moments we shared mattered, that the time we invested had significance, that the emotions we felt were acknowledged. But when someone suddenly behaves as if none of it existed, it creates a psychological shock. Your mind begins searching for answers. You revisit conversations, moments, memories, trying to understand where the connection disappeared. But here's the part most people don't understand. For narcissistic personalities, acknowledging the past sometimes creates emotional discomfort they would rather avoid. Because acknowledging the relationship would also mean acknowledging the emotional impact it had. And that might include things like responsibility, regret, accountability. And those are emotions narcissistic personalities often struggle to face. So instead of processing those emotions, they distance themselves from the past entirely. Almost like closing a book and placing it on a shelf they never plan to revisit. But here's where the confusion becomes even deeper for the person left behind. Because you experience the relationship differently. For you, the memories are still alive. You remember the first time you felt understood, the first time they made you laugh in a way no one else had. The moments that made you believe the connection was real. So when the person who shared those moments suddenly behaves as if they never happened, it creates a painful contradiction. Your memories say the relationship mattered, their behavior suggests it didn't. And when those two realities collide, self-doubt often appears. You may start asking yourself questions like, did I misinterpret everything? Was the connection only real to me? Was I the only one who believed in the relationship? But here's something incredibly important to remember. Just because someone refuses to acknowledge the past does not mean the past was meaningless. Your memories are still valid. Your emotions were still real. And the impact that relationship had on your life still matters. In fact, many survivors later realize something powerful. The reason the relationship affected them so deeply is because they were capable of genuine emotional connection. They were capable of vulnerability, of empathy, of love. And those qualities are not weaknesses, they are strengths. The difference is that narcissistic personalities often relate to relationships in a very different way. Where emotionally healthy people form bonds through mutual care and empathy, narcissistic personalities often focus more on how relationships reflect back on them, how the relationship supports their self-image, how it reinforces the identity they want to present to the world. And when that reflection changes, when the relationship no longer supports the image they want to maintain, it becomes easier for them to detach. Sometimes very quickly, sometimes so completely that it appears as if the relationship never existed. But over time, something important begins to happen for the person who was left behind. Clarity, because once you begin to understand the pattern, the confusion slowly starts to fade. You begin recognizing that the erasure was never about your value. It was about their inability to face emotional responsibility. And that realization can become a powerful step in the healing process. Take a moment and think about how that must have felt for you. You were still processing the relationship, still remembering the moments that mattered, still trying to understand what went wrong, and meanwhile, they seem to move forward as if the relationship had no emotional weight at all. That kind of emotional contrast can feel incredibly painful because it makes you question your own reality. And this is why it hurts so much. Because when someone erases the relationship from their narrative, it can feel like they are erasing your significance too. But here's something important to understand. Their behavior does not define your value. It reflects their emotional limitations. Healthy relationships involve emotional accountability. They involve acknowledging shared experiences. They involve recognizing the emotional impact people have on each other. But narcissistic personalities often struggle with that level of emotional responsibility. Instead of processing the past, they distance themselves from it, sometimes very quickly, sometimes almost completely. But let me ask you something. If the relationship truly meant nothing, why did it feel so intense in the beginning? Why were the emotions so strong? Why did the connection feel so powerful? Because the experience you had was real. Your emotions were real. Your investment was real. What was missing was not your sincerity. It was their emotional depth. Understanding this can change something important inside you. Because when someone acts like you never existed, it's easy to interpret that behavior as proof that you didn't matter. But the truth is very different. It often reveals how someone copes with accountability. By avoiding it, by rewriting the narrative, by moving forward without looking back. But you're doing something much more powerful. You're reflecting, you're understanding, You are learning from the experience. And that process creates emotional awareness that will protect you in the future. Healing from narcissistic relationships often involves reclaiming your own story. Because for a while, the relationship may have made you question your reality, your perception, your worth. But over time, something begins to shift. You start trusting your memories again. You start recognizing the manipulation that once confused you. You start seeing the relationship with new clarity. And slowly, the power it once had over your emotions begins to fade. If a narcissist acts like you never existed, remember this. People who lack emotional accountability often rewrite the past to protect their ego. But your experiences cannot be erased. Your growth cannot be erased. Your healing cannot be erased. And the love you are capable of giving is not a weakness. It is proof of your emotional depth. The right people will never need to erase you from their story. They will value the chapter you shared, and they will treat your presence with respect. If this video helped you understand something about your experience, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we talk openly about narcissistic relationships, trauma bonds, and emotional recovery. Because understanding what happened to you is the first step toward emotional freedom. And remember, you survived the relationship. Here, we help you survive it too. And if you've ever found yourself wondering something else, why do I still miss them, even after everything that happened? The next video on this channel explains why trauma bonds make it so hard to let go of narcissistic relationships. And once you understand that, even more pieces of the puzzle will start to make sense.